How many of you have watched the movie The Martian? It's a pretty good movie, isn't it? Some of you may remember that the China National Space Administration had developed some rockets to launch an unmanned exploration probe. That rocket could be used to send additional supplies to keep Matt Damon alive. That rocket was the only one that could be used in time, and NASA didn't know it existed. The Chinese scientists eventually approached NASA and the two science agency reached a deal. Long story short, Matt Damon is happily back to Earth thanks to a cooperation between NASA and China. I think this story illustrates a dream of cooperation between the two countries in a territory of enormous uncertainty. It is a mission that wouldn't have been possible without the facilitation of scientists in the US and China. It is also a story and movie that the Chinese people really love as they ponder the more prominent role of China in the 21st century. As we discuss AGI, I would like us to keep this narrative in mind, that China might be developing some rockets to get to AGI, and some of those rockets could be really critical for our world collective safety and governance endeavors. The mission of building safe and beneficial AGI needs to be a joint worldwide effort with China. My key concern with AGI is best captured in the OpenAI Charter. It describes a collective action problem where the late-stage AGI development might become a competitive race without time for safety precautions. And since AGI timelines remain highly uncertain, we should take into account the emerging projects of tomorrow and not just the leading ones today. And that's how China comes into the picture. And here I would like to cash out the specific kinds of understanding that are the most important regarding China. To have solid and robust global coordination, I believe having the following shared hypotheses is very important. First, there is a serious possibility that AGI could be developed in the coming decades. Second, as AGI becomes developed, there are enormous uncertainties and risks with such technology. Third, international cooperation on AI is not a zero-sum game. It could be mutually beneficial for both countries as they share a common course in how AI is developed and deployed. Countries might face cooperative incentives in both minimizing the downside risk as well as capturing the enormous upside potential that AGI has. So in the rest of my presentation, I'm going to give you the Chinese perspective on the following hypotheses. Then I will suggest a few approaches that could foster greater coordination with China. Finally, I'll wrap up by suggesting how you might be able to help. In China, it seems that the idea of AGI is gradually emerging into the public discourse, as evidenced by discussions in the academia, policymaking, and expert interviews. Kuantan Joon, who is here today, is the chair of computer science at Peking University. He was also a key drafter of the China's AI development plan. He has made multiple statements that strong AI might appear in the next 15 to 30 years. Tien, who is the Deputy General of Chinese Academy of Sciences, he was giving a lecture to the top legislative body in China, the National People's Standing Committee. There, he was discussing the future trends of AI, and the first point he notes is the development from narrow to general AI, citing the goal of DeepMind and a quote from Demis Hassabis. In 2017, there was this expert interview and survey on AI timelines. And he found that respondents who received undergraduate education in China predicted that there are 28 years before the arrival of human-machine intelligence as compared to 76 years for those who study in the US as a median estimate. If you find out that private AI labs in China are interested in such research, it seems reasonable to infer that they believe such technology is plausible in the coming few decades. Of course, companies in China, just like everywhere else, have numerous motivations for expressing one's interest in AGI, such as attracting top talent or gaining prestige. But that said, it still seems useful to know which labs are claiming to be heading in that direction. And here are some examples. Xu Wei, who was the prominent scientist at Baidu Institute of Deep Learning, co-founded by Andrew Ng at the time, believed that we should stop talking about whether AGI is feasible and begin coming up with concrete ways to develop such technology. And now he has moved on to the startup Horizon Robotics as the chief scientist of General AI Lab. That lab has the explicit long-term goal of deploying human-level general AI. Yao Xing, who is a vice president at Tencent, has made multiple statements that developing AGI is one of 3 strategic priorities for the company. In particular, he believes that games are the most important direction for developing AGI because all the world's leading AI research companies are heading in that direction. And let's look at their research in 2018 for a moment. In May 2018, they developed Phoenix Go based on AlphaGo Zero's published paper, and then later applied Monte Carlo tree search techniques to their own game, King of Glory, which is a complex multiplayer mobile game in China. Then in September, they developed T-Star Bot, their own product, to beat the cheating level beyond AI in StarCraft 2. And just in last month, they published the paper Hierarchical MicroStrategy Model and apply it to the game of King Glory, and in particular 5v5 instead of 1v1. So the game becomes a lot more complex, and they claim that they are now competitive with the top 1% of human players. So with JD.com, which is the Amazon of China, the director of AI Lab also has made a public lecture talking about the 7 key technical challenges of developing AGI. He gives examples such as advances in the technique of unsupervised learning and learning to learn. Now, I've shown some evidence that China thinks that AGI might be a plausible technology in the upcoming few decades. And many of the Chinese thinkers have also publicly expressed their concerns with the risk of such technology. One of them is Donghua, who has written the undergraduate textbook in machine learning in China, is in some way the Stuart Russell in the country. He has publicly said that strong AI should not and cannot be done, and suggests that no AI researchers should develop such technology, as it might lead to the greater survival crisis for humanity. Another person is Donghua, who is one of the most influential living philosophers in China, has written a long essay arguing that we should set the safety conditions for AI, as superintelligence might lead to an earth-shaking end to human history. Jung Ji, who is a deputy director at Research Center for Bringing Inspired Intelligence, and who is here today as well, has taught a class on philosophy and ethics of AI. And in the course at the University of Chinese Academy of Sciences, he discusses the problem of existential risk of AI. To assess the intention of China, one of the best ways is to look at what the political leaders say, given the importance of top-down and elite political communication in mobilizing the effort of the whole society. At the World AI Conference in Shanghai last year, a statement was read for President Xi Jinping. The statement emphasized that China is willing to cooperate with other countries to promote development, improve security, and share results in AI. In particular, China is particularly interested in issues such as legislation, governance, ethics, and security of AI. Liu He is a China-US trade war chief, as people call it. He might feel unsurprisingly nationalistic in 2018, but he still echoed President Xi's view by saying that AI represents a new era in which cross-national cooperation is inevitable. So more generally, I think that there are a few short-term challenges and long-term opportunities in fostering greater coordination on AI safety with China. Currently, I think that there is some confusion with the idea of AI safety, partly because the terms AI safety and AI security are the same in Mandarin, Anquan. Relatedly, there is relatively little awareness of alignment research for AGI. Second, it seems to me that some of the Chinese thinkers have overly focused on the topic of consciousness as compared to just thinking about the risk of a generally competent, goal-oriented system, which might not be conscious, but nevertheless warrant our concerns. In the longer term, however, I am optimistic of China being a responsible actor in developing and deploying the technology. The first reason is that China is run as a technocracy, with most political leaders being educated as engineers and scientists for their school. And in one of the recent interviews with Joe Rogan, Elon Musk has said that politicians in China are pretty good at science. He met with the mayor of Beijing, who holds a PhD degree in environmental engineering, and the mayor of Shanghai, whom Elon described as very smart. So given the technical complexity of AGI, it seems beneficial that a government and its politicians understand the science of the technology. Second, The China model allows the country to engage in long-term planning, which led to projects such as the National Railway System through the 5-year planning. And the Hofstede cultural theory also suggests that the Chinese rank extremely highly on the dimension of long-term orientation. This means that they have a tendency to focus on longer-term results instead of the short-term goals. Thirdly, China has a historical view of dynastic cycles, with dozens of dynasties having risen and fallen in the past 4,000 years. And this means that the prospect of a civilizational collapse is deep-rooted in China's subconscious. And this makes risk management one of the key topics in governance for China. So given all these factors, it seems that China might be able to be a responsible actor in developing and deploying transformative AI. And this gives a window of opportunity for fostering coordination in AI safety. So given this context, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the promising approaches for strengthening coordination with China, given my research at the Center for the Governance of AI. So the first approach is to establish collaboration with technical AI safety. So in a recent paper published by a government-affiliated think tank, it suggests that we have enormous issues with problems such as robustness in distributional shift, interpretability, and explicitly cited the concrete problems of AI safety. It suggests that China should begin international cooperation in AI safety research while promoting the development from narrow to general AI. In particular, China should set up overseas research centers and begin international technical exchange between researchers as some of the concrete policy ideas. Here, I also compiled a list of research-focused international partnerships and found that 6 out of 7 of them are industry-university collaboration. So one example is the collaboration between MIT and SenseTime. The second approach is to support the multi-stakeholder and industry alliance effort from China and internationally. I see the participation of Baidu in Partnership AI as a positive development, as it was the first Chinese member to do so. Organizations should continue to invest in such effort, and I think certain working groups at PEI might be more technically oriented and easier to reach global consensus, such as the Safety Critical AI Group. On the other hand, organizations could consider interfacing with China-led alliances. One example is the China AI Industry Alliance with members such as Microsoft and IBM. More recently, there was also this Global AI Academic Alliance, which was founded by 15 members, with the majority of them being Chinese institutions, but also a few universities such as University of Sydney and MIT. The third approach is to foster the machine learning and AI transnational epistemic community. So epistemic community are networks of experts with policy-relevant and authoritative expertise. And this form of governance has contributed to the creation of nuclear non-proliferation policy, as an example. I think the case for optimism in ML is strong because almost all the researchers from around the world attend the same conferences. And according to a study, a quarter of the co-authors at 2017 Triple AI conference were Chinese, and the conference was even rescheduled due to an original conflict with Chinese New Year. Another report suggests that 53% of top papers from China involve international collaboration. And the network graph here shows that China is most connected with researchers in the US, Canada, and Australia. The fourth approach is to bridge the Western and Chinese AI ethical principles. So in 2018, the first 3 ethical principles came out of China, represented by efforts at Chinese Academy of Sciences, Tencent Research Institute, and Baidu. All these principles include consideration of safety, frequently with the phrase safe and reliable, 安全可靠. Notably, the one by Tencent Research Institute includes a precautionary principle, suggesting that we should ensure AGI serve the interests of humanity. As suggested in the Linking AI Principles project here, it shows that almost all the international proposals of ethical principles include consideration of safety. So this can hopefully be a shared basis for constructive global dialogue between China and the rest of the world. Now, with this context and approaches, I'm going to talk about some of the implications for people in this room and how you can help. I think a primary approach is to support the local development of safe and reliable AI in China. And foreign organizations and individuals can play an important role of being a technical advisor in different capacities. So one way to do it is that you can work with a local Chinese partner in rolling out projects in the country. For example, Berggruen Institute partnered with Peking University in launching their China Center and have engaged with people like Francesco Rossi in past AI ethical discussion events. The second thing that you can do is to invite Chinese researchers to attend conferences like this one and allow cross-cultural dialogue to happen at these conferences and on this very important topic of AI safety. The third thing is that you can be a technical advisor, a speaker, or a participant at some of the AI technical safety workshops hosted by Chinese institutions. As an example that I'm really excited about, Tsinghua University Institute of AI is planning to organize an international conference on AI safety. And it is the top AI academic lab in China, so it could really be a good bridge for developing global best practices in AI safety and be the local champion of this course in China. In general, I'm building a team to facilitate the coordination between Chinese and foreign organizations in the topic of AI safety and governance, so I would really love to talk if you are interested in supporting, advising, or getting involved in any capacity. Going forward, I think that more people should do research and participate in the discussions of global coordination involving China. So there are many topics that people could contribute to. For example, in research, it seems that there is a predominant paradigm of the approach of bring inspired intelligence or even bring light intelligence for AGI researchers in China. And one question would be, what are the safety and coordination implications for this? In policy, are there any common policy concerns between US government, industry, Chinese government, Chinese industry, and how could we imagine and conceptualize a track to dialogue in AI safety in the future? In terms of kind of normative designations or ideal governance, using the terminology by Alan, can we find commonalities between Chinese and Western thought on global governance theories? In China, there are discussions on Tien, or under heaven, as a theory of global governance, and also the community of shared future for mankind from the government. At last, I would just like to emphasize that global coordination at scale doesn't occur effortlessly. In 1975, the Asilomar Conference on Recombinant DNA was organized by 140 mostly Western scientists, and that meant researchers from other countries had to contend with rules that they had no role in establishing. 4 decades later, in 2015, many of these scientists recognized the need to have buy-in from China, and they wanted to organize a CRISPR ethical conferences involving Chinese researchers. And so the conference was co-organized with Chinese Academy of Sciences. And in 2018, the second conference was even hosted in Hong Kong instead of Washington, DC. In AI, we likely do not have 4 decades to get this coordination right. And the prospect of the world would be much brighter if we can have more talented Chinese contributing to AI safety research agenda and also the dialogue of global governance. And as the Chinese often say, the whole world within the 4 seas belong to one family. So I really look forward to building this global future of shared AGI with all of you. Thank you.
We've got time for a few questions.
Hey, thanks very much for a great talk. I think you've given us a lot of great and interesting reasons to have optimism about the future of cooperation, but not to be overly pessimistic, what do you think could go wrong? Like, what are the main things that you think could cause cooperation to fail?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of nuances in communicating the potential risks and benefits of AI, even though we would want to have greater coordination. And we largely believe that there are enormous redistributable gains from safe AI. There is also game theoretic situations where it might make sense to really fast forward the development. So I would be very cautious about communicating idea of AGI when I interface with organizations and try to frame and discuss all the nuances of such idea. And I think that this problem might be exacerbated from the media talking about arms race narrative in most of the time. So I think within this community, it will be useful to combat this narrative of it is always a zero-sum game and it is always adversarial. And I think we need to do this very carefully and diligently.
Thanks very much, Brian. That was great. This is not so much a question, but just following up on this. I know it's really, really short notice because it's come up very quickly. If anybody is passing through Hong Kong later this week, January 11th and 12th, we are going to, at HKUSD in Hong Kong, host the first time FatML in Asia to try to promote more of this dialogue across the cultures. This is a trial. You can drop by. There are a lot of tutorials to get local communities up to speed. And then there will be a real bigger one later on in this year around November. And we'd very much welcome partnering with anybody who has ideas.
Thank you very much. It was a great talk. I was interested in the fact that the linguistic conflation between security and safety. I wonder if there are insights to be had in translation of words like generality, agency, consciousness, and do Chinese researchers come at any of these problems from different directions because of those differences in linguistics?
That's an interesting question. I haven't thought too much about it, and I don't have a good example. Yeah, I think a lot of the terms in AI and machine learning have been translated from English. So reinforcement learning, for instance, is basically a direct translation from English. But in terms of concepts such as consciousness, that might be different. But I have to think more about that and get back to you.
One more quick question.
Okay, good. So in the US and in Europe, oftentimes when we talk about governance concerns, there's this ongoing tension about whether we should be talking more about near-term concerns initially and getting some definitions down, or whether we should be talking about AGI and future prospects. And I guess what I understand this conference is specifically about AGI, and therefore your presentation underscored that. But what I don't understand about China yet is what's a better way of approaching these governance concerns with China? Is it through the AGI issue, or are these questions of responsibility and privacy and the wrath of other near-term concerns, is that really getting on the governance table, or is that still sort of in the discussion period?
Yeah, I think the boundary between near term and longer term might not be as distinct as people usually make out. So I think with examples such as interpretability, it is both a technical problem that is important for the near term and the longer term. And I think that a lot of AI safety researchers believe that there are insights to be had from current efforts, and that could be applied to advanced AI systems. So I think just engaging with Chinese researchers on the topic of AI safety doesn't really assume that we need to talk about AGI. And I think there are avenues of cooperation even in that light. That said, I think in terms of AI policy, it might make sense to have more explicit boundary of what is the time frame that we're talking about. And I think that I would be interested in exploring what kind of policy concerns that Chinese government industry and the U.S. government industry both have, as I suggested in the presentation, and that might be safety critical AI, that might be malicious use from terrorists and others, and currently China and U.S. are already building a lot of cooperation on counterterrorism. So I think that there are these kind of leverage points to build cooperation, and hopefully as we go forward with more transformative AI, people are already sitting in the same room and talking to each other for quite a while.
Okay, let's thank Brian again for a great talk.
Thank you.